The security footage showed it clearly. 3:47 a.m. ICU, hallway at Mercy Cross Hospital, Phoenix, Arizona, completely empty. Then the patient monitor in room 12 began shrieking. The alarm blared for 43 seconds before the screen went black. By the time the morning shift arrived, the whispers had already started. Something was broken at Mercy Cross, and everyone knew it, but nobody talked. Not when Marcus Vail ran the place. Not when speaking up meant your mortgage payment disappeared. Claire Hendricks was about to change that. The quiet night nurse with the military past was done staying silent. And what she uncovered wasn't just negligence, it was murder hiding behind spreadsheets. If you want to see how one underestimated woman brought down an empire built on greed, stick with me until the very end. Like this video, drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels, and let's get started. Claire Hendricks pushed through the employee entrance at Mercy Cross Medical Center at 6:43 p.m., her scrub still crisp, her hair pulled back tight. 29 years old, 5'6", the kind of person who disappeared in a crowd unless you looked at her eyes. Sharp, measuring, always calculating the distance between what people said and what they meant. She'd been at Mercy Cross for 3 weeks. Nobody knew her yet. That's how she wanted it. The hospital smelled like industrial cleaner and overcooked cafeteria food. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting that particular shade of institutional white that made everyone look half dead. Claire swiped her badge at the ICU entrance and walked into chaos barely contained. The unit was understaffed. Again. 6 patients, 2 nurses, 1 tech who looked about 17 and terrified. "You're the transfer, right?" The voice came from behind the nurses' station. A woman in her mid-40s, dark hair streaked with gray, eyes that had seen too many budget cuts. Her badge read Monica Graves, RN Supervisor. Claire Hendricks. Night shift ICU. "You read the protocols?" "I did." Monica studied her for a moment. "You military?" Claire hesitated. "Army, 4 years, medical support." "Support." Monica's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "That's what they're calling it now?" Claire didn't answer. "Listen," Monica said, voice dropping. "Keep your head down. Do your job. Don't ask questions. Don't make waves. Marcus Vail doesn't like waves." "The CEO?" "The man who decides if you still have a job tomorrow morning." Monica handed her a tablet. "Patients are loaded. Meds are logged. If something breaks, you improvise. We don't have backup equipment anymore." Claire took the tablet. "What happened to the backup?" Monica's expression hardened. "Budget reallocation. Vail's speciality. He reallocates things until people die, then reallocates the blame." She walked away before Claire could respond. The shift started smooth enough. Claire moved through the ICU with the efficiency of someone who'd worked in worse conditions. She'd treated wounded soldiers in field hospitals where the nearest surgeon was a helicopter ride away, and the power cut out twice a day. Mercy Cross was supposed to be easier. It wasn't. Room 4, IV pump making a clicking noise that shouldn't exist. Claire logged it, flagged it, kept moving. Room 7. Ventilator with a cracked display. Still functional, barely. Room 9. Patient, 63-year-old diabetic, complaining about numbness. Chart said his glucose levels were stable. Claire checked anyway. Monitor was reading wrong. She recalibrated manually, caught the spike before it became a crisis. Nobody noticed. That was fine. She wasn't here for recognition. Around midnight, the young tech, his badge said Kevin, approached her near the medication room. "You actually check everything, don't you?" Claire glanced up from the inventory sheet. "You don't?" "I mean, yeah, but..." Kevin shifted his weight. "Most people just trust the systems. Systems fail." "You sound like my instructor." He managed a tired smile. "But seriously, you should ease up. This place burns people out fast enough without adding extra work." Claire closed the inventory cabinet. "You know what burns people out faster?" "What?" "Patients dying because nobody double-checked." Kevin's smile faded. He nodded slowly and walked away. At 1:15 a.m., Claire was updating charts when she heard Monica's voice echo from the supervisor's office, raised, frustrated, talking to someone on the phone. "I don't care what the report says. We need another nurse on this floor." "No, I'm not exaggerating. 4 patients per nurse is dangerous, 6 is criminal." The conversation ended abruptly. Monica emerged, jaw tight, and nearly walked past Claire before stopping. "You hear that?" "Some of it. Vale's office. They don't care." Monica rubbed her temples. "We've been short-staffed for 8 months. 3 nurses quit. 2 were fired for complaining. 1 had a breakdown in the parking lot and never came back." Claire kept her voice neutral. "Why do you stay?" Monica looked at her like she'd asked why people need oxygen. "Because somebody has to. Because these patients didn't ask to be here. Because walking away means admitting that money wins." She exhaled slowly. "But it's getting harder." Claire said nothing. At 2:30 a.m., the floor was quiet. Kevin had fallen asleep in the break room. Monica was doing rounds on the opposite wing. Claire was alone at the nurses' station when she noticed something odd in the equipment logs. The ICU had received 17 new patient monitors over the past 6 months. Not refurbished, not upgraded, brand new, but Claire had counted the monitors on the floor. Only 9. She pulled up the procurement records. 17 monitors purchased from a vendor called Meditech Solutions. Purchase orders signed by Marcus Vale himself. Price: $47,000 each. Claire opened another tab and searched for Meditech Solutions. The company website looked professional. Glossy images, technical specifications, testimonials from hospitals she'd never heard of. She dug deeper. Corporate filings, business registrations. Meditech Solutions had been incorporated 2 years ago. The registered agent was a law firm in Delaware. The actual ownership was buried under 3 layers of shell companies, but one name appeared in the fine print: Marcus Vale. Claire sat back, staring at the screen. The CEO was buying equipment from his own company, charging the hospital premium prices, and the equipment wasn't even making it to the ICU. She took screenshots, saved them to a secure folder, then cleared her browser history and went back to patient rounds like nothing had happened. At 3:40 a.m., the alarm went off. Room 12. Walter Emerson, 71 years old, post-cardiac surgery. Stable condition when Claire had checked him at 2 a.m. Now his monitor was screaming. Claire sprinted down the hallway, her shoes squeaking against the linoleum. She hit the door and froze for half a second, taking in the scene. Walter was seizing. His IV pump had stopped. The medication drip, the one keeping his heart rhythm stable, was offline. No alarm, no warning, just a blank screen and a dying man. "Kevin!" Claire's voice cut through the chaos. "Get Monica, now!" She didn't wait. She moved to Walter's bedside, checked his airway, his pulse. Thready. Irregular. His lips were turning blue. The crash cart was across the room. Claire grabbed it, yanked it to the bedside, and pulled the manual resuscitation bag. She fitted the mask over Walter's face and started ventilating. Squeeze, release, while her other hand reached for the medication drawer. Atropine. She calculated the dose in her head, drew it up one-handed, and injected it into his IV line. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release. Walter's chest rose and fell. His color wasn't improving. The door slammed open. Monica rushed in, eyes wide. "What happened?" "IV pump died. No alarm. He's been without meds for at least 5 minutes." Claire's voice was steady, mechanical. "I gave atropine. He needs cardioversion if his rhythm doesn't stabilize." Monica moved to the defibrillator, powered it on. "Pads ready?" Claire kept ventilating, watched the monitor. Walter's heart rate was erratic, bouncing between 40 and 120. Then, slowly, it began to settle. 60, 65, 70. His color improved. The seizure stopped. Claire pulled the mask away. Walter gasped, sucked in air, and his eyes fluttered open, confused, terrified, alive. Monica sagged against the wall. "Jesus!" Claire checked the IV pump. She unplugged it, examined the back panel. The serial number was partially scratched off. The casing was cheap plastic, not the reinforced polymer that medical-grade equipment used. "This isn't hospital-grade," Claire said quietly. Monica stared at her. "What?" "This pump. It's a knockoff." "That's impossible. We only use certified vendors." Claire turned the pump around, showed her the serial number. "Look at the manufacturer code. This isn't FDA approved." Monica's face went pale. She reached for her phone, hesitated, then lowered it. "If I report this, Vale will bury it." "Exactly." Claire looked at Walter. now breathing steadily, still unconscious but stable. How many other people almost died because of his deals? Monica didn't answer. At 7 a.m., the day shift arrived. Claire handed off her patients, filed her incident report, detailed, clinical, damning, and walked out of the ICU without saying a word to anyone. She drove home in silence, parked outside her apartment, sat in the car for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. Then she pulled out her phone and started making calls. The first call went to an old Army contact, a logistics officer who'd worked healthcare fraud cases after leaving active duty. Claire explained what she'd found. The fake equipment, the shell companies, the near-death incident. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "I have documentation." "Then you need a lawyer and a reporter, and you need to move fast because once Vale knows you're digging, he'll come after you." "Let him." The second call went to an investigative journalist named Rachel Porter, someone Claire had found through 3 hours of research, someone with a track record of exposing corporate corruption. Rachel answered on the second ring. "This is Porter. My name is Claire Hendricks. I'm a nurse at Mercy Cross Hospital in Phoenix. I have evidence that the CEO is defrauding the hospital and endangering patients." There was a pause. "I'm listening." Claire laid it out. The equipment, the shell companies, Walter Emerson's near death, the pattern of staffing cuts and missing supplies. Rachel was silent for a long moment. "Can you prove it?" "I have procurement records, purchase orders, corporate filings, and I have a patient who nearly died because of defective equipment. How soon can you meet?" "Today." They met at a coffee shop downtown at 2 p.m. Rachel was late 30s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of tired determination that came from chasing stories nobody else wanted to touch. Claire handed her a flash drive with everything: screenshots, medical logs, financial records. Rachel plugged it into her laptop and started scrolling. Her expression darkened with every page. This is worse than I thought." "Can you run with it?" Rachel looked up. "If I run this story, Vale will know it came from you. He'll destroy you, fire you, blacklist you, maybe worse." Claire met her eyes. "I spent 4 years patching up soldiers who got shot because someone higher up made a bad call. I'm done watching people die for someone else's profit." Rachel smiled, grim, approving. "All right, give me a week. I'll need corroboration, more sources, legal review, but yeah, we're running this." Claire went back to work that night. The ICU felt different now, smaller, more fragile. She saw the cracks everywhere, the equipment held together with hope and duct tape. The nurses working double shifts because there was nobody else. The patients who trusted the hospital to keep them safe and had no idea how close they were to disaster. Monica pulled her aside around midnight. "You filed a report about Walter." "I did." "Vale's office called. They want to meet with you tomorrow." Claire nodded. "I figured. Be careful. He doesn't do warning shots." The meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. in Vale's office on the top floor. Claire arrived early, still in her scrubs from the night shift, and sat in the waiting area outside his door. The office was decorated like a corporate fantasy: leather chairs, abstract art, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Phoenix. Everything designed to remind visitors that Marcus Vale had power, and they didn't. At 10:15, his assistant opened the door. "Mr. Vale will see you now." Claire walked in. Marcus Vale was 52, silver-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than Claire made in a month. He stood behind his desk, didn't offer a handshake, didn't smile. "Miss Hendricks, sit." She sat. Vale folded his hands on the desk. "I read your incident report. Very thorough." "Thank you." "Also very inflammatory." He leaned forward. "You're accusing this hospital of using substandard equipment. Do you understand the liability implications of that claim?" "I understand that a patient nearly died." "Patients have complications. That's the nature of healthcare." Claire kept her voice level. "The IV pump failed. It wasn't a complication, it was a malfunction." "According to you." "According to the equipment itself. I documented the serial number. It's not FDA approved." Vale's expression didn't change. "You've been here 3 weeks. You don't know how this hospital operates. You don't understand the financial pressures we're under. Sometimes we have to make difficult choices to keep the doors open." "Difficult choices or illegal ones?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Vale stood slowly. "You're out of line." I'm doing my job. Your job is to follow orders, not investigate procurement, not question hospital policy, and certainly not to file reports that could expose this facility to lawsuits. He walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. I'm going to give you a choice, Ms. Hendricks. You retract your report, you apologize for the allegations, and you keep your head down, or you find employment elsewhere. Claire stood. I'm not retracting anything. Vale turned. Then you're fired, effective immediately. You can't fire me for filing a safety report. I can fire you for insubordination, for creating a hostile work environment, for failing to meet performance standards. He smiled, thin, cold. Take your pick. Claire walked to the door, then stopped. You should know, I kept copies of everything. Vale's smile faded. Is that a threat? It's a fact. She left before he could respond. Security escorted her out of the building 20 minutes later. They watched while she cleaned out her locker, handed over her badge, and walked to her car. The other nurses watched from the windows. Nobody said anything. Claire drove home. Made another call. This time to a federal agency, the Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Inspector General. I need to report healthcare fraud, she told the agent who answered. And she told them everything. The next 72 hours blurred together. Rachel's story went live. The headline read, Phoenix Hospital CEO accused of equipment fraud, patient endangerment. The article laid out the shell companies, the inflated contracts, the defective equipment. It quoted anonymous sources, nurses who'd been too afraid to speak publicly. And it featured one named source, Claire Hendricks, former ICU nurse willing to testify. The story exploded. Local news picked it up. The national. Social media erupted. Patients started calling lawyers. Staff started talking. And Marcus Vale started fighting back. His PR team released a statement calling the allegations baseless and defamatory. They questioned Claire's credentials, her motivations, her mental stability. They pointed to her short tenure at Mercy Cross as evidence she didn't understand the hospital's operations. But the federal investigators had already started digging, and what they found made Claire's evidence look like the tip of an iceberg. On day 4, Claire got a call from an unknown number. Ms. Hendricks, this is Agent Lisa Brennan, HHS Office of Inspector General. We need to talk. They met at a federal building downtown. Agent Brennan was early 40s, no nonsense, with the bearing of someone who'd spent years building cases that destroyed careers. You opened a very big door, Brennan said, sliding a folder across the table. We've been monitoring Vale for 18 months. Your evidence gave us enough for a warrant. Claire opened the folder. What she saw made her stomach turn. Vale hadn't just been defrauding Mercy Cross. He'd been running the same scheme at 4 other hospitals across 3 states. Shell companies, fake vendors, defective equipment, millions of dollars siphoned from healthcare budgets while patients suffered with substandard care. How many people died? Claire asked. Brennan's jaw tightened. We're still counting. When do you move on him? Soon. But we need your testimony. Full deposition, sworn statement, willingness to testify in court if it goes to trial. Claire didn't hesitate. Whatever you need. Good. Because Vale's going to come after you hard. He'll try to discredit you, intimidate you, maybe worse. Are you ready for that? Claire thought about Walter Emerson, gasping for air on that ICU bed. She thought about all the other Walters, the ones who didn't make it, the ones whose families never knew their deaths were preventable. I'm ready, Brennan nodded. Then let's burn this bastard down. The task force moved fast. Warrants were issued. Subpoenas went out. Bank records were seized. Within a week, they had enough evidence to build a case that would put Vale away for decades. But Vale wasn't going quietly. On day 9, Claire's apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen. Just a message. Papers scattered, drawers opened, a clear sign that someone had been looking for something. She called the police, filed a report, knew it wouldn't matter. The next day, she got the call from Monica. Claire, it's me. Monica, how are you holding up? There was a long pause. Vale's gone crazy. He's threatening everyone, firing people who talk to reporters. He tried to shut down the ICU investigation, but the board overruled him. It's chaos here. Good. Let it burn. There's something else. Monica's voice dropped. He's been asking about you, personal stuff. Where you live. Who you talk to. I think he's trying to build a case to sue you. Claire felt cold anger settle in her chest. Let him try. I'm serious. He's dangerous. So am I. The call ended. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She sat on her couch, staring at her phone, waiting for something to happen, waiting for the next move. It came at 4:47 a.m. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. Then another. This isn't over. Claire screenshot both messages, forwarded them to Agent Brennan, and blocked the number. Then she made coffee and started preparing her deposition. The federal task force scheduled the raid for dawn on day 14. Claire wasn't there. She was in a safe house across town, giving her sworn statement to a court reporter while Agent Brennan asked questions that would form the backbone of the prosecution. But she heard about it later. 6 vehicles, 12 agents. They arrived at Mercy Cross at 6 a.m. and went straight to Vale's office. He wasn't there. They found him in the parking garage trying to load boxes into his car, financial records, hard drives, documents he'd been too arrogant to destroy earlier. Agent Brennan personally handled the arrest. Marcus Vale, you're under arrest for healthcare fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and reckless endangerment. Vale's lawyer arrived 30 minutes later, screaming about rights and procedures and unlawful seizure. Didn't matter. The case was airtight. Claire heard the news from Rachel, who called her at noon, voice crackling with exhausted triumph. They got him. He's in custody. He tried to run, Claire. He actually tried to run. Claire closed her eyes, felt something unclench in her chest. What happens now? Now the system does its job. Arraignment, trial, prison. He's done. And the hospital? The board fired the entire executive team. They're bringing in new leadership, clean slate. Rachel paused. They want to talk to you. About what? Coming back. Leadership position, patient safety director, your own office, actual authority. Claire laughed, short, bitter. They want to hire the woman they escorted out by security? They want to hire the woman who exposed a criminal and saved lives. Think about it. Claire said she would, but deep down she already knew her answer. 3 weeks later, Marcus Vale stood in federal court for his arraignment. The charges filled 2 pages. The evidence filled 3 boxes. His bail was set at $5 million. He couldn't make it. He went back to jail. Claire watched from the gallery, silent, invisible among the reporters and victim families. When it was over, she walked out into the Phoenix sunlight and drove back to Mercy Cross. Not as a leader, not as an executive, as a nurse, because that's who she was. That's what mattered. Monica met her at the ICU entrance, eyes wet. You came back. I never really left. The unit looked different now. New equipment, proper staffing, nurses who didn't flinch when administrators walked by. Claire picked up a patient chart and got to work. The woman they'd underestimated had torn down an empire built on greed and fear. And now, finally, the healing could begin. But the healing didn't come easy. Claire's first shift back felt like walking through a crime scene that nobody had bothered to clean up. The ICU had new equipment, gleaming monitors, properly certified IV pumps, backup ventilators that actually worked. But the staff moved like survivors of something they couldn't talk about. Quiet. Cautious. Waiting for the next disaster. She was updating a patient chart when a doctor she didn't recognize approached the nurse's station. Mid-50s, gray temples, expensive watch. His badge read Dr. Richard Kessler, Chief of Medicine. You're Hendricks. Claire looked up. I am. The one who got Vale arrested. I reported fraud. The federal government did the rest. Kessler studied her with the cool appraisal of someone used to making quick assessments. The board wants to meet with you. Thursday, 10 a.m. I already told them I'm not interested in administration. They're not asking. He turned to leave, then paused. You blew up this hospital's reputation. Now they want to know if you're here to rebuild or just collect a paycheck. He walked away before Claire could respond. Monica appeared from the supply room, arms full of fresh linens. Kessler's a piece of work. He always that charming. Only when he's threatened. Vale kept him on a short leash, controlled his budget, micromanaged his hires, made him sign off on equipment he knew was garbage. Monica dumped the linens on the counter. Now Kessler's trying to prove he wasn't complicit. Good luck with that. Claire went back to her chart. I'm not here to judge anyone. Maybe you should be. The words hung there. Monica walked away. The rest of the shift passed without incident. Claire treated a post-surgical patient with fluid retention, caught a medication error before it reached the patient, and documented everything with the kind of precision that came from knowing someone would eventually read every word she wrote. At 2 a.m., during her break, she sat in the empty cafeteria with bad coffee and checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Rachel Porter. 2 voicemails from Agent Brennan. 1 text from a number she didn't recognize. The text read, "We need to talk, not about Vale, about what's coming next." Claire deleted it without responding. She went back to the ICU and finished her shift. Dawn broke over Phoenix, painting the sky in shades of orange and copper. Claire handed off her patients to the day shift and drove home through empty streets. Her apartment still felt violated. She'd changed the locks, installed a security camera, and moved all her documentation to a safety deposit box. But the feeling remained. Someone had been here, touching her things, looking for leverage. She showered, set an alarm for 6 hours, and collapsed into bed. The alarm never went off because her phone rang at noon. Claire grabbed it, groggy. "What?" "Ms. Hendricks." The voice was unfamiliar, professional, female. "This is Diane Mercer. I'm the interim CEO at Mercy Cross. I know you're scheduled to meet with the board Thursday, but something's come up. We need you here today." Claire sat up, adrenaline cutting through the exhaustion. "What happened?" "There's been an incident, patient safety concern. I'd rather not discuss it over the phone." "Give me an hour." She made it in 45 minutes. Mercy Cross looked the same from the outside, clean, modern, designed to project competence and care. But Claire could see the cracks now. The landscaping was overgrown. The parking lot needed repaving. The sign near the entrance still had Marcus Vale's name on the dedication plaque. Someone would fix that eventually. Diane Mercer met her in the main lobby. Early 60s, gray suit, sharp eyes behind wire-frame glasses. She had the bearing of someone who'd spent decades managing institutions in crisis. "Thank you for coming." Mercer shook Claire's hand. "Let's walk." They moved through the hospital corridors, past visitors and patients and staff who didn't look up. Mercer kept her voice low. 3 hours ago, a patient in the cardiac unit went into respiratory distress. The nursing staff responded appropriately, called the code, got him stabilized. But when they reviewed the incident, they found something. "What?" Mercer stopped outside a conference room and opened the door. Inside, spread across the table, were medical equipment boxes. Still sealed, branded with the Mercy Cross logo. Claire stepped closer. The boxes were marked Meditech Solutions. Her blood went cold. "We thought we'd purged all of Vale's fraudulent equipment," Mercer said. "Turns out he had backup inventory stored in an off-site warehouse. These boxes were delivered this morning as part of a standing order that nobody knew existed." Claire picked up one of the boxes, opened it. Inside was an IV pump identical to the one that had nearly killed Walter Emerson. Who authorized the delivery? That's what we're trying to determine. The purchase order is dated 6 months ago, signed electronically using Vale's credentials. But he was already under investigation by then. So either he was setting up a contingency plan, or someone else was using his access. Mercer nodded slowly. "That's what concerns me. If there's someone still inside this hospital working with Vale, or working his system without him, we have a serious problem." Claire set down the box. "You need to lock down all equipment deliveries, audit every purchase order from the last 2 years, and you need to bring in federal investigators again." "Already done. Agent Brennan is on her way." Mercer paused. "But there's another issue. The staff is scared. They don't know who to trust. We've had 3 nurses request transfers this week alone. Morale is in the basement." "That's not my problem." "Actually, it is, because you're the only person in this building who has credibility right now." Mercer met her eyes. "The board wants you to lead the safety audit. Full authority, access to everything. You report directly to me." Claire shook her head. "I told you. I know what you told us, but this isn't about titles or corner offices. This is about making sure what happened to Walter Emerson doesn't happen again." Mercer's voice hardened. "You started this. Now finish it." Before Claire could answer, the conference room door opened and Agent Brennan walked in, flanked by 2 other federal investigators. "Miss Mercer, Ms. Hendricks." Brennan looked at the boxes on the table. Well, this complicates things. They spent the next 3 hours going through every detail: the delivery manifests, the warehouse records, the digital trail of purchase orders and approvals. What they found was worse than Claire had imagined. Vale hadn't just been running one scheme. He'd built an entire shadow procurement system: fake vendors, ghost employees, automated orders that bypassed normal oversight. And he'd done it with help from inside the hospital. We found evidence of at least 2 accomplices, Brennan said, pulling up a laptop screen. Someone in IT who maintained the fake credentials, and someone in procurement who approved the invoices. Do you have names? Mercer asked. Working on it. But whoever they are, they're still here, still active, and they know you're looking for them. Claire felt the pieces clicking together. The break-in at my apartment. Brennan nodded. We think they were looking for evidence that could identify them. You kept detailed records of your investigation. If those records mentioned specific employees, they didn't. I focused on Vale and the vendor companies. Then you got lucky. Brennan closed the laptop. But they don't know that, which means they're going to keep coming after you until they're sure you're not a threat. Mercer stood. Then we need to find them first. The investigation went into overdrive. Brennan's team seized servers, interviewed staff, and combed through financial records looking for patterns. Claire was put on administrative leave, for her own protection, Mercer said, though it felt more like house arrest. She spent 2 days in her apartment, watching news coverage of the expanding scandal. Reporters camped outside Mercy Cross. Patients filed lawsuits. The Arizona Department of Health Services launched their own investigation. And through it all, somewhere in the shadows, Vale's accomplices watched and waited. On the 3rd day, Claire got a call from Monica. You need to come in. I'm on leave. I don't care. Something's happening, and you need to see it. Claire drove to the hospital and found Monica waiting in the parking garage, looking over her shoulder like someone followed her. What's going on? Monica handed her a flash drive. This was left in my locker. No note, no explanation. What's on it? Personnel files, salary records, email logs. Monica's voice shook. Claire, someone's been watching everyone, tracking who talks to investigators, who talks to reporters. This is surveillance data from inside the hospital. Claire plugged the drive into her phone. The files were encrypted, but the folder names were clear enough. Staff_communications, investigation_contacts, risk_assessment. Who gave you this? I don't know, but whoever it is, they're on our side. Monica glanced around the empty garage. Or they're setting us up. Claire pulled the drive out. I need to get this to Brennan. Wait, Monica grabbed her arm. There's something else. I've been asking around, quiet, just listening, and I keep hearing the same name. Who? Kessler. Claire went still. The chief of medicine? He signed off on equipment purchases. He approved budgets. He sat in meetings with Vale and never questioned anything. Monica's grip tightened. What if he wasn't just complicit? What if he was a partner? That's a serious accusation. I know. But think about it. Kessler had access to everything. He could authorize purchases, manipulate records, cover tracks, and now he's trying to distance himself, playing the victim. Claire thought about Kessler's cold assessment when he'd told her about the board meeting, the expensive watch, the defensive tone. I'll talk to Brennan. She called from the car. Brennan answered on the first ring. I have new evidence and a possible suspect. They met at the federal building an hour later. Brennan took the flash drive, handed it to a tech specialist, and listened while Claire explained Monica's theory about Kessler. We've looked at him, Brennan said. He's got financial ties to 2 of Vale's shell companies, but so do a dozen other people at that hospital. We need something concrete. What about the surveillance data? The tech specialist looked up from his laptop. This is comprehensive. Whoever compiled this had access to the hospital's internal network, email servers, and security systems. This isn't something you do from a terminal in the break room. So we're looking for someone with high-level IT access, or someone who paid someone with access. Brennan stood. I'm bringing Kessler in for questioning. If he lawyers up, we'll know he's dirty. And if he doesn't, then we keep digging. Kessler was brought in the next morning. Claire watched from an observation room as Brennan conducted the interview, polite, professional, slowly tightening the noose. Dr. Kessler, how well did you know Marcus Vale? Professionally, he was the CEO. I reported to him. Did you socialize? Meals, golf, personal interactions? Occasionally, it was part of the job. Did you know about his financial interest in Meditech Solutions? Kessler hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. No. You signed purchase orders for Meditech equipment. I signed hundreds of purchase orders. That was my responsibility. Did you ever question the pricing, the quality, the fact that some equipment never made it to patient care? I trusted the procurement process. Brennan slid a document across the table. This is a bank record showing a wire transfer of $50,000 from a subsidiary of Meditech Solutions to an account in your name. How do you explain that? Kessler's face went white. I want a lawyer. Brennan smiled. Of course you do. The interview ended. Kessler was placed under arrest 20 minutes later. Conspiracy to commit fraud, accepting kickbacks, reckless endangerment. His bail hearing was scheduled for the following week. But the investigation wasn't over, because the surveillance data on Monica's flash drive pointed to someone else. Someone who'd been watching the watchers, documenting the investigation, and staying 3 steps ahead of everyone. The tech specialist found it buried in the metadata, a digital signature that traced back to a terminal in the hospital's IT department, specifically a workstation assigned to David Park, Senior Network Administrator. Park had been with Mercy Cross for 11 years. Clean record, quiet, invisible, perfect cover. Federal agents executed a search warrant on Park's home at 6 a.m. They found encrypted hard drives, burner phones, and financial records showing payments from multiple shell companies connected to Vale. Park wasn't there. He'd run. Brennan issued a warrant and put out an alert. Every airport, every border crossing, every bus station in the Southwest was notified. But Park had a head start and enough money to disappear for a long time. Claire heard about it from Mercer, who called her at noon sounding exhausted. Park's in the wind. Kessler's in custody but not talking, and we still don't know if there are others. Mercer paused. The board meeting is tomorrow, 10 a.m. They want answers. I don't have answers. Then give them something else. Give them a plan. Claire showed up to the board meeting wearing the same clothes she'd worn to her first shift at Mercy Cross, clean scrubs, hair pulled back, no pretense. The boardroom was all dark wood and leather chairs designed to intimidate. 15 faces stared at her from around the table. Mercer made introductions. Board members, hospital executives, legal counsel. Claire nodded to each one and didn't bother remembering their names. Ms. Hendricks, the board chairman said. He was 70, distinguished, the kind of man who'd spent his life in rooms like this. Thank you for coming. We've been reviewing the situation. It's dire. Yes. We need to restore public confidence. We need to demonstrate that Mercy Cross is safe, accountable, and committed to patient care. We need a visible change. Claire waited. We'd like to offer you the position of Chief Patient Safety Officer, reporting directly to the CEO. Full authority over all safety protocols, equipment procurement, and quality assurance. Substantial salary increase, benefits, office. No. The room went silent. The chairman blinked. I'm sorry? I said no. Claire leaned forward. You don't need another executive. You need a culture change. You need nurses who feel safe reporting problems. You need doctors who aren't afraid of budget cuts. You need transparency, accountability, and leadership that actually cares about patients instead of profit margins. That's exactly why we're offering you this position. Then you're not listening. Claire stood. I'm a nurse. That's what I'm good at. That's where I belong. If you want to fix this hospital, stop hiring people to manage problems and start fixing the systems that create them. She walked toward the door. Ms. Hendricks? The chairman's voice stopped her. What would you do if you were in charge? Claire turned. I'd start by firing everyone in this room who knew what Vale was doing and said nothing. Then I'd rebuild from the ground up with people who actually work in patient care. And I'd make sure that every person in this hospital, from housekeeping to the executive suite, understands that patient safety isn't a department. It's the only thing that matters. She left. The story hit the news that evening. Whistleblower nurse rejects hospital leadership role, demands systemic change. Rachel Porter had somehow gotten details of the board meeting and ran with it. Claire's phone exploded with calls, job offers, interview requests, speaking opportunities. She ignored all of them and went back to work. Her next shift started at 7 p.m. The ICU was busy. 3 new admissions, 2 patients being transferred to step-down, 1 family meeting that Monica was handling with the kind of gentle firmness that came from 20 years of experience. Claire picked up a chart and got to work. Around midnight, a patient in room 8 started declining. 82-year-old woman, post-stroke, multiple comorbidities. Her oxygen saturation was dropping despite supplemental oxygen. Claire assessed her quickly. Lung sounds diminished on the left side. Respiratory rate climbing. Early signs of pneumonia. She called the attending physician, got orders for antibiotics and a chest x-ray, adjusted the oxygen delivery, and stayed with the patient while the portable x-ray tech set up the machine. The woman's daughter sat in the corner, eyes red from crying. "Is she going to be okay?" Claire checked the monitor. "We're doing everything we can. The antibiotics should help, but we need to see how she responds." "She almost died 3 days ago. Different hospital. They said their equipment malfunctioned." Claire went very still. "Which hospital?" "Desert Valley Regional. They transferred her here because she needed better care." The daughter wiped her eyes. "The nurse who caught it saved her life. Woman named Hendricks. You know her?" Claire felt something tighten in her chest. "Yeah, I know her." The x-ray confirmed pneumonia. Claire started the antibiotics, monitored the patient's response, and by 4 a.m. the oxygen levels were improving. The daughter fell asleep in the chair. Claire dimmed the lights and moved on to the next patient. At 6 a.m., Monica found her in the medication room. "You look like hell." "Thanks. I heard about the board meeting, the part where you told them all to get lost." Claire measured out medication. "I didn't say that." "Close enough." Monica leaned against the doorframe. "You know they're going to make changes because of what you said. They should have made changes before people died." "Yeah, they should have." Monica was quiet for a moment. "The woman in room 8. Her daughter told me what you did at Desert Valley." Claire didn't look up. "I was doing my job." "You saved her life. Then you got fired for it. Then you exposed the CEO. Then you turned down a 6-figure job to keep working night shift." Monica shook her head. "You're either the most principled person I've ever met or completely insane." "Maybe both." They stood in silence. Then Monica's phone buzzed. She checked it, and her expression changed. "They found Park." Claire looked up. "Where?" "Mexico. Trying to cross into Guatemala. Mexican authorities grabbed him at the border." Monica scrolled through the message. "He's being extradited. Should be back in Phoenix by tomorrow." "Did he talk?" "Not yet, but Brennan thinks he will. He's looking at 20 years minimum. That's a lot of time to think about cooperation." The news broke that afternoon. Park's arrest made national headlines. The story expanded. Reporters uncovered similar schemes at other hospitals, other cities, other executives who'd put profit over patients. Congressional hearings were announced. Federal regulations were proposed. The entire healthcare industry was forced to confront a system that had been broken for years. And at the center of it all, whether she wanted to be or not, was Claire Hendricks. The hospital received hundreds of emails. Most were supportive, some were threats. Security was increased. Claire's photo was removed from the hospital website at her request, but the attention didn't stop. 2 weeks after Park's arrest, Claire was leaving her shift when a man approached her in the parking garage. Mid-30s, suit, nervous energy. "Ms. Hendricks, I'm James Garrett. I'm a producer with Not Interested. Please just hear me out. We want to tell your story. Documentary, maybe limited series. The nurse who took down a corrupt hospital CEO. It's important. People need to know." Claire kept walking. "My story is already out there. You don't need me." "But we do. We need your voice, your perspective." She stopped and turned. "You want my perspective? Here it is. This isn't about me. It's about a system that's failing patients every single day because administrators care more about quarterly reports than human lives. It's about nurses who work double shifts because hospitals won't hire enough staff. It's about doctors who have to fight insurance companies just to give people the treatment they need. You want a story? Tell that one." Garrett stared at her. We could tell all of it, but we need someone to help us get it right." Claire shook her head and walked to her car. She drove home, exhausted, and found Agent Brennan waiting outside her apartment. "We need to talk." They sat in Claire's kitchen. Brennan looked like she hadn't slept in days. Park started talking, gave us everything. Names, accounts, documentation. Brennan pulled out a folder. Vale had accomplices in 7 hospitals across 4 states. Kessler was one of the smaller players. The real money was going to hospital board members, procurement officers, even a few state health department officials. Claire felt sick. How many patients were affected? "We're still counting, but we're talking thousands. Equipment failures, delayed treatments, substandard care." Brennan pushed the folder across the table. "The Justice Department is building cases against 43 people. It's going to take years to prosecute them all." "And Vale? Trial starts in 6 months. His lawyers are trying to negotiate a plea. We're not interested." Brennan met her eyes. "But there's a problem. His defense team is claiming you fabricated evidence. They're going after your credibility, your military record, your psychiatric evaluations from after your deployment." Claire's jaw tightened. "I was evaluated for PTSD, standard procedure." "I know, and it's irrelevant, but they're going to use it anyway. They're going to paint you as unstable, vindictive, someone with an axe to grind against authority." Brennan leaned forward. "We can fight it, but you need to be prepared for them to dig into every part of your life. Let them dig. Claire, I spent 4 years in combat zones watching people die because someone made a bad decision. I'm not afraid of lawyers." Claire stood. "Is that everything?" Brennan hesitated. "There's one more thing. We found something in Park's files. Communications with someone outside the hospital network. Encrypted. We're still trying to trace it." "What kind of communications?" "Instructions. Updates on the investigation. Warnings about what we were looking into." Brennan's expression darkened. "Someone was feeding Park information about our investigation in real time." Claire felt ice in her stomach. "You have a leak. Maybe. Or maybe Park had access we didn't know about." Brennan stood. "Either way, watch your back. If someone's still out there protecting Vale's operation, you're their biggest threat." After Brennan left, Claire sat in the dark and thought about everything that had happened. The arrests, the investigations, the lives saved and the ones already lost. She thought about Walter Emerson, who'd sent her a card thanking her for saving his life. She thought about the woman in room 8, recovering because someone had caught the pneumonia early. She thought about all the patients she'd never meet, the ones who'd benefit from the changes forced by exposure and scandal and federal oversight. And she thought about the enemies still hiding, watching, waiting for their chance. Her phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. "You should have taken the deal." Claire stared at the message, typed a response. "Come find me." She hit send and waited. Nothing happened for 3 days. Claire worked her shifts, walked to her car in the parking garage with keys between her fingers, and slept with her phone on the nightstand. The silence felt deliberate, calculated, someone testing her nerves. On the 4th day, Agent Brennan called at 6 a.m. "We traced the number that texted you. Burner phone, activated 2 weeks ago, purchased with cash at a convenience store in Tempe. Security footage shows a woman, mid-40s, paid in 20s and walked out. You get a face? Ball cap, sunglasses. She knew where the cameras were." Brennan paused. "But we ran the phone's location data. It pinged 3 times near Mercy Cross, twice in the parking garage, once near the administrative building." Claire sat up. "She works there, or she's watching someone who does." "When was the last ping?" "Yesterday, 11 p.m., right around the time you would have been leaving your shift." Claire felt her skin go cold. She'd walked past that spot, alone, in the dark. "I'm putting a protective detail on you." "No." "Claire, if someone's watching me, I want them to keep watching. Put agents on me and they disappear. I need them visible." Claire stood, pacing her small apartment. "Whoever this is, they're arrogant enough to send threats. That means they think they're untouchable. Let's prove them wrong." Brennan was silent for a long moment. "You're using yourself as bait. I'm using myself as pressure. They think I'm scared. I'm not." Claire grabbed her keys. "Run the employee database. Female, mid-40s, access to hospital grounds after hours. How many matches?" "I'll get back to you." The list came through 2 hours later. 43 women fit the basic criteria: nurses, administrators, cleaning staff, lab techs. Brennan's team started running background checks, financial records, looking for connections to Vail or the shell companies. Claire studied the list while sitting in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the hospital. Most of the names meant nothing. A few she recognized from passing in hallways or seeing at shift changes. Then one name jumped out: Karen Delgado, Hospital Risk Management Director. Claire had met her once, briefly, during orientation. Polished, professional, the kind of administrator who smiled while taking notes that could end careers. Risk management oversaw incident reports, patient complaints, legal exposure. They knew everything that went wrong at Mercy Cross, and they decided what got reported and what disappeared. Claire called Brennan. Karen Delgado, Risk Management, check her financial records. What am I looking for? Payments for Meditech Solutions or any of Vail's companies? Consulting fees, bonuses, anything that doesn't match her hospital salary. Brennan put her on hold. 3 minutes later, she came back, voice tight. Delgado received $47,000 over 18 months from a company called Healthcare Consulting Associates. It's a subsidiary of one of Vail's shell corporations. What was the money for? According to the invoices, risk assessment services. But the company has no other clients, no office, no employees except Delgado. Claire closed her eyes. She was burying incident reports, hiding equipment failures, making sure nothing reached regulators, which means she knew patients were dying and did nothing. Worse, she made sure nobody else could do anything either. Brennan exhaled slowly. I'm bringing her in. Wait, Claire's mind raced. If you arrest her now, she lawyers up and we get nothing. But if she thinks she's safe, she might make a mistake. What are you suggesting? Let me talk to her first. Absolutely not. She's sending me threats because she thinks I'm a threat to whatever's left of Vail's operation. Maybe there's more we don't know about. More people, more hospitals. Claire stood, started walking toward Mercy Cross. Give me one conversation. If she doesn't break, you bring her in. This is a terrible idea. Probably. Brennan was quiet. Then, you wear a wire. My people are listening, and if anything goes sideways, we move in immediately. Deal. Claire met the tech team in a parking structure 2 blocks from the hospital. They fitted her with a microphone the size of a shirt button and a transmitter that clipped to her waistband. The lead tech, a woman named Sarah with efficient hands and tired eyes, tested the signal twice. Clear audio. We'll be monitoring from the van. You get in trouble, say the word protocol, and we come running. Claire nodded. She walked into Mercy Cross at 2 p.m. and took the elevator to the 3rd floor where risk management had their offices. The department was quiet. Most administrators worked partial schedules, gone by mid-afternoon to avoid the chaos of evening shifts. Karen Delgado's office door was open. She sat behind her desk, reading something on her computer screen, perfectly composed. Dark hair pulled back, navy suit, diamond earrings that cost more than Claire made in 6 months. Claire knocked on the doorframe. Delgado looked up, and for just a fraction of a second, something flickered across her face. Recognition, calculation. Then the professional smile locked into place. Claire Hendricks, I heard you were back. Can we talk? Of course. Come in. Delgado gestured to the chair across from her desk. Close the door if you'd like privacy. Claire left it open and sat down. Delgado folded her hands on the desk. I assume this is about the ongoing investigations. Terrible situation. Marcus really fooled a lot of people. Did he fool you? The smile didn't waver. I'm not sure what you mean. Your risk management. You see every incident report, every equipment failure, every patient complaint. You had to have known something was wrong. I saw patterns, yes, but patterns aren't proof. And my job is to protect the hospital from liability, not to investigate procurement fraud. Your job is to keep patients safe. My job, Delgado said, voice cooling slightly, is to manage institutional risk. Sometimes that means making difficult decisions about what issues require escalation and what issues can be resolved internally. Claire leaned forward. You mean what issues get buried? I mean, what issues are handled appropriately? Delgado's smile finally faded. You've been here, what, 2 months? You don't understand how hospitals work. Every facility has equipment failures. Every facility has budget constraints. If we reported every single incident to regulators, we'd spend all our time filling out paperwork instead of treating patients. Walter Emerson almost died because of defective equipment you knew about. I knew about one incident report. One. And the equipment was immediately pulled from service. After I filed the report. How many incidents did you bury before I got here? Delgado stood. This conversation is over. If you have concerns about my performance, you can address them through proper channels. Claire stayed seated. I know about healthcare consulting associates. Delgado went very still. $47,000 over 18 months. Consulting fees for a company with no clients except you. A company owned by Marcus Vail. Claire watched Delgado's face. That's conspiracy. That's fraud. That's criminal negligence resulting in patient deaths. Get out of my office. How many people died because you buried their incident reports? How many families never knew their loved ones were killed by equipment you knew was defective? I said get out. Claire stood slowly. Federal investigators are building a case against everyone who helped Vail. Kessler's already arrested. Park's cooperating. It's over. The only question is whether you go down fighting or whether you save yourself by telling the truth. Delgado's professional mask cracked. Anger flashed through. You self-righteous bitch! You think you're a hero? You're a nurse who got lucky. You stumbled onto something you didn't understand and now you're running around acting like you saved the world. I saved Walter Emerson and the woman in room 8. And however many other people won't die because Vail's equipment isn't in service anymore. Claire moved toward the door. But you're right, I am just a nurse. Which makes it really embarrassing that I found evidence you spent 18 months hiding. She walked out. Behind her, Delgado grabbed her phone. Claire kept walking down the hallway toward the elevator, listening to the wire transmitter picking up Delgado's voice through the open office door. Don't care what you told me before, we have a problem. She knows about the payments. No, she just left. I don't know how much the feds have. The elevator arrived. Claire stepped in. The doors closed. In the surveillance van, Agent Brennan was already mobilizing her team. They arrested Delgado 90 minutes later as she tried to leave the hospital through a side entrance. She had a packed bag in her car, $2,000 in cash, and a plane ticket to Costa Rica departing that night. She didn't say a word, just stared at Claire through the window of the federal vehicle as they drove her away. Brennan met Claire in the parking garage afterward. That was reckless. It worked. This time. Brennan pulled out her phone, showed Claire a text message. Delgado made 4 calls after you left her office. 2 went to her lawyer, 1 went to a number we're still tracing, and 1 went to Marcus Vail's defense attorney. Claire felt something cold settle in her chest. She warned him. Probably, which means Vail knows we're closing in on everyone he worked with. He's going to start making moves. Brennan pocketed her phone. His trial starts in 3 weeks. We expected his team to attack your credibility. Now they're going to come after you with everything. Let them. Claire, listen to me. These people don't play fair. They'll dig up everything, your military record, your psychiatric evaluations, your personal life. They'll twist it, weaponize it, use it to make you look unstable or vindictive or incompetent. I know. And you're okay with that? Claire thought about the soldiers she'd treated in field hospitals. Young men and women with catastrophic injuries, looking at her with desperate trust while she worked to keep them alive with inadequate supplies and impossible conditions. She thought about coming home and being asked if she was okay, if she needed help, if she was struggling to adjust. She'd said yes. She'd done the therapy. She'd been honest about the nightmares and the hypervigilance and the way loud noises made her flinch. That honesty was about to become a weapon. I'm okay with it, she said, because the alternative is letting them win. The attack started 2 days later. Vail's defense team filed a motion challenging Claire's credibility as a witness. They cited her PTSD diagnosis, claimed she had a history of conflicts with authority figures, and suggested her accusations against Vail were motivated by personal grievance rather than evidence. The media picked it up immediately. Hero nurse or troubled veteran? Defense questions whistleblower's mental state. Claire's phone exploded with calls, reporters wanting comment, victim advocacy groups offering support, former Army colleagues reaching out to defend her. She ignored all of it and went to work. Her shift that night was brutal. 3 admissions in 4 hours, all critical. A car accident victim with internal bleeding, a diabetic in ketoacidosis, a heart attack patient who coded twice before they got him stabilized. Claire moved through it with mechanical precision. Start the IV. Draw the labs. Monitor vitals. Call the attending. Document everything. Around 3 a.m., during a brief lull, Monica found her in the supply room. You see the news? I saw it. And I'm working. Claire restocked her medication cart. Vale's lawyers are doing their job. Doesn't change the evidence. It changes how people see you. Monica leaned against the door frame. There are staff members here who think you're grandstanding, using the hospital's problems to get attention. I don't care what they think. You should. Because if the staff doesn't trust you, patients won't either. And if patients don't trust you, you can't do your job. Claire slammed the cart drawer closed. I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted people to stop dying because some CEO decided profit mattered more than lives. If that makes me grandstanding or unstable or whatever else they want to call me, fine. I can live with it. Monica studied her. You really don't care, do you? About the attention, the credit? None of it. No. Then you're either the most genuine person I've ever met or you've got a death wish. Maybe both. Monica almost smiled. Then her expression sobered. Be careful. People who don't care about their own reputation make enemies nervous. Nervous enemies do stupid things. She was right. The next morning, Claire found her car with slashed tires and a note under the windshield wiper. Drop the case or drop dead. She called the police, filed a report, and took an Uber home. That afternoon, someone leaked her home address online, along with a post calling her a government plant trying to destroy healthcare workers. Claire's landlord called, worried about liability. She assured him it was fine, increased her renter's insurance, and installed additional security cameras. That evening, a brick came through her apartment window with another note. Last warning. Claire called Brennan. I'm putting protection on you whether you want it or not. Fine. And you're going to a safe house until the trial. I have shifts scheduled. I don't care. Someone is escalating and I'm not letting you get killed because you're too stubborn to accept help. Claire looked at the broken glass on her floor, the brick sitting on her couch, the note written in block letters by someone who thought threats would make her disappear. Okay. The safe house was a nondescript rental in Scottsdale, 40 minutes from the hospital. 2 bedrooms, basic furniture, federal marshals rotating shifts outside. Claire packed a bag, gave Monica her new number, and disappeared from public view. She spent 3 days in forced isolation reviewing her testimony for the trial. Brennan's team prepared her for every possible attack, questions about her military service, her PTSD diagnosis, her motivations for investigating Vale. They're going to suggest you have an authority problem, Brennan said during one prep session. That you targeted Vale because you don't respect leadership. I don't respect leadership that kills people. That's good. Use that. Brennan flipped through her notes. They'll also suggest you're seeking attention, fame, book deals, movie rights, financial gain. I've turned down every offer. We'll document that, but expect them to twist it. Say you're holding out for bigger deals, playing hard to get for leverage. Claire rubbed her temples. Is there anything they won't twist? No, that's the point. They don't need to prove you're wrong. They just need to create reasonable doubt about your reliability. Brennan closed her folder. But here's the thing. The evidence doesn't care about your mental health history, the financial records, the equipment failures, the patient deaths. That's all documented. Your testimony supports the evidence. It doesn't replace it. Then why do they care about discrediting me? Because you're the face of this case. You're the one patients and families connect with. If they destroy your credibility, they undermine the emotional impact of the evidence, and juries care about emotions. The trial preparation continued. Claire practiced staying calm under hostile questioning. She reviewed timelines, cross-referenced documents, and memorized details she could cite verbatim. On day 5 in the safe house, Rachel Porter called. I need to warn you about something. Claire put the call on speaker. What? Vale's team is shopping a counter-narrative to friendly media outlets. They're claiming you were fired from your previous hospital for insubordination, that you have a pattern of conflicts, that you targeted Vale because you were looking for a scapegoat for your own career problems. That's not true. I know, but they're using enough real details to make it believable. You were asked to leave Desert Valley Regional, right? I wasn't asked. I transferred because I wanted more trauma experience. Can you prove that? Claire thought about it. I have my transfer request. My performance reviews from Desert Valley were excellent. Get them to Brennan. And to me. I'm running a counterpiece, but I need documentation. Claire hung up and immediately called her former supervisor at Desert Valley. The woman remembered her, confirmed the transfer was voluntary, and sent over personnel records within an hour. Brennan's team verified everything and released a statement. The media cycle shifted slightly. But the damage was done. Enough people believed the smear that Claire's reputation had another crack in it. On day 8, Agent Brennan arrived at the safe house with news. We traced Delgado's fourth phone call. It went to a private investigator named Russell Grant, former cop, disbarred PI, now works freelance for defense attorneys doing opposition research. He's the one running the smear campaign. Probably, but here's the interesting part. Grant received a $50,000 payment 3 days ago from a law firm that doesn't represent Vail. Different firm, different client list. Claire leaned forward. Who? We're working on it, but I think Vail's reach goes beyond what we've documented. I think there are other people, other hospitals, other schemes we haven't uncovered yet, and they're all working together to make this go away, by destroying me. By destroying the credibility of anyone who might expose them. Brennan sat down. Claire, I need you to understand what you're up against. This isn't just about Marcus Vail anymore. You've threatened an entire network of corruption. These people have money, power, and nothing to lose. They will do whatever it takes to protect themselves. What are you saying? I'm saying if you want to walk away, now's the time. We have enough evidence to convict Vail without your testimony. It won't be as strong, but it'll hold. Claire thought about Walter Emerson, about the woman in room 8, about every patient she'd ever treated who trusted the system to keep them safe. No. No what? No, I'm not walking away. Brennan nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer. Then we go all in. I'm going to petition the judge to allow evidence about the broader conspiracy. If Vail's connected to other schemes, other hospitals, we expose all of it. Will the judge allow it? Depends on how much we can prove before trial starts. Brennan stood. But either way, things are about to get much worse for you before they get better. She was right. The following week, someone leaked Claire's complete military medical file to the media. Every therapy session, every PTSD evaluation, every private moment of vulnerability she'd shared with doctors trying to help her process combat trauma. The headlines were brutal. Whistleblower nurse's secret mental health crisis. PTSD patient or paranoid accuser. Claire watched it unfold from the safe house, numb. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages, supporters, critics, reporters, strangers with opinions about her mental fitness. She turned off the phone and sat in silence. That evening, Monica showed up at the safe house. The marshals let her through after confirming her identity. She found Claire sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. I came to check on you. I'm fine. Monica sat down. You're not fine. Nobody would be fine after having their medical records splashed across every news outlet in the country. It doesn't matter. It does matter. Those were private, confidential. Someone committed a federal crime to get them. Claire looked at her. Do you believe them? The articles? Which part? That I'm unstable, that I targeted Vail because I have problems with authority, that I'm using this for attention. Monica was quiet for a long moment. I believe you're someone who saw something wrong and did something about it when everyone else was too scared. I believe you saved lives, and I believe the people trying to destroy you are terrified because you're winning. Claire felt something crack in her chest. I'm tired. I know. I just wanted to do my job. I know. They sat in silence. Then Monica's phone buzzed. She checked it, and her expression changed. You need to see this. She pulled up a news article. The headline read, Federal investigators expand healthcare fraud probe to 3 additional states. Claire scanned the article. Brennan's team had found connections between Vail's network and hospitals in California, Nevada, and New Mexico. Similar schemes, similar equipment fraud, similar patterns of patient endangerment, and similar whistleblowers who'd been silenced, fired, or intimidated into silence. They're all coming forward, Monica said. 6 nurses, 3 doctors, 2 administrators, all willing to testify about what they saw, all citing your case as the reason they're finally speaking up. Claire read the names, strangers who'd faced the same choice she had, stay silent or fight back. They'd chosen to fight. You started something, Monica said quietly, whether you wanted to or not. Claire's phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on without thinking. A text from Rachel Porter. They're calling it the Mercy Cross effect. Healthcare workers across the country reporting fraud because of what you did. You need to see this. The link led to a compilation of news stories, hospital workers filing complaints, regulators launching investigations, patients demanding accountability. All of it traced back to one night shift ICU nurse who'd refused to stay quiet. Claire set down the phone. I need to get back to work. Monica stared at her. You're in protective custody. I know, but the trial starts in a week, and I've been away from patient care too long. You can't be serious. I'm a nurse. That's what I do. That's who I am. Claire stood. Vale wanted to destroy me by making people think I'm not fit to do my job. Best way to prove him wrong is to do my job. Monica shook her head. You're either very brave or very stupid. Still probably both. Claire convinced Brennan to let her work modified shifts at Mercy Cross under marshal supervision. She'd arrive escorted, work under observation, and leave the same way. It was complicated, expensive, and probably excessive. But it sent a message. Her first shift back, the ICU staff watched her walk in flanked by 2 federal marshals. Nobody said anything. Claire swiped her badge, picked up her assignment, and got to work. 3 hours into the shift, a patient in room 6 started declining. Sepsis, rapid onset, vitals crashing. Claire called the code, started interventions, and coordinated with the response team exactly the way she'd done hundreds of times before. The patient stabilized. Afterward, one of the younger nurses approached her near the medication room. I saw the news, the stuff they're saying about you. Claire didn't look up from her charting. Okay, I just wanted you to know, I don't believe it. What you did, exposing Vale, that took guts. And the way you just handled that code, the nurse hesitated. You're the real deal. Claire met her eyes. Thank you. The nurse walked away. Small moments, small victories, but they added up. The trial started on a Monday morning in downtown Phoenix. Federal courthouse, tight security, media circus outside. Claire arrived in a marshal vehicle, walked through a side entrance, and was escorted to the prosecution's preparation room. Brennan met her there, looking like she hadn't slept in days. You ready? As ready as I'll ever be. Vale's team is going to come at you hard. Stay calm, stick to the facts. Don't let them bait you into emotional responses. Claire nodded. The courtroom was packed. Victims' families, media, hospital staff. Vale sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, looking smaller than Claire remembered. His lawyers flanked him, projecting confidence. The prosecution laid out their case over 2 days. Financial records, equipment failures, patient deaths. Expert testimony from medical professionals who explained exactly how Vale's fraud had endangered lives. Then they called Claire to the stand. She walked up, was sworn in, and sat down. The courtroom went quiet. The prosecutor started gently. Basic questions about her background, her military service, her employment at Mercy Cross. Claire answered clearly, directly, establishing her credibility. Then they moved to the night Walter Emerson almost died. Claire described every detail. The failed IV pump, the lack of alarms, the desperate minutes trying to keep him alive with inadequate equipment, the discovery that the pump was defective. The courtroom listened in absolute silence. Then came cross-examination. Vale's lead attorney was a woman in her 50s, sharp-eyed, expensive suit. She smiled at Claire like they were friends. Ms. Hendricks, you testified that you have PTSD. Is that correct? I was diagnosed with PTSD after my military service, yes. And PTSD can cause paranoia, can it? It can cause hypervigilance, which means seeing threats that aren't there. It means being alert to potential danger. The attorney smiled. Isn't it possible that your PTSD made you see a conspiracy where there was simply a normal equipment malfunction? Claire met her eyes. No, because the equipment wasn't normal. It was counterfeit. That's documented. But you didn't know that when you filed your initial report, did you? You assumed it was fraud before you had proof. I documented what I observed. A patient nearly died because of equipment failure. That's my job. The attorney shifted tactics. You were asked to leave Desert Valley Regional Hospital, weren't you? I requested a transfer. After conflicts with administration, after requesting more trauma experience, which Desert Valley couldn't provide. But you've had conflicts with supervisors at multiple hospitals, haven't you? Brennan stood. Objection? Relevance? The judge looked at the defense attorney. Counselor? Your Honor, we're establishing a pattern of behavior suggesting the witness has difficulty with authority figures. The judge considered. I'll allow it. But get to your point. The attorney turned back to Claire. You filed complaints at 3 different hospitals in 5 years. Isn't that true? I filed safety reports when I observed patient care issues. That's my responsibility as a nurse. Or is it that you look for problems where none exist because you have difficulty accepting institutional authority? Claire felt anger rising but kept her voice level. I look for problems that kill patients, like the defective equipment Marcus Vale knowingly purchased from his own company. The attorney's smile tightened. You really believe there's a vast conspiracy, don't you? That everyone was complicit? I believe the evidence. Financial records showing Vale owned Meditech Solutions, purchase orders for equipment that was never delivered, patient deaths caused by defective devices. That's not belief. That's fact. The cross-examination continued for another hour. The attorney tried every angle: Claire's mental health, her motivations, her credibility, her pattern of conflicts. Claire answered each question calmly, referring back to documented evidence, refusing to be rattled. Finally, the judge called for a break. Claire stepped down from the witness stand, legs shaking, and was escorted out of the courtroom. Brennan met her in the hallway. You did good. It felt like getting attacked for an hour. That's because you were. But you held your ground. The jury saw that. Claire leaned against the wall, exhausted. How much longer? Prosecution rests tomorrow. Defense presents their case next week. Deliberations probably start in 10 days. And then? And then we find out if justice actually works. The trial continued. The defense called their own experts, argued that equipment failures were normal, suggested that Vale had been misled by his own staff. They painted him as a victim of overzealous prosecution, but the evidence was overwhelming. The financial records were clear. The patient deaths were documented. And Claire's testimony, despite the attacks, had landed. On the final day of testimony, the prosecution played security footage from the night Walter Emerson almost died. The empty ICU hallway. The screaming monitor, Claire running into the room. The jury watched in silence. Closing arguments took a full day. Both sides made their case. The prosecution emphasized the trail of money and bodies. The defense emphasized reasonable doubt. Then the jury went to deliberate. Claire waited in the safe house, unable to eat, unable to sleep. Brennan called with updates. The jury was still out. No verdict yet. Could be hours or days. On day 3 of deliberations, Claire's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a woman's voice, distorted, mechanical. You think you've won. You haven't. Vale's just the beginning. The line went dead. Claire stared at her phone. Then she called Brennan. Someone just threatened me. Different voice, different number. They said Vale's just the beginning. Brennan was silent for a long moment. We're tracing it. Stay where you are. What does it mean? It means you were right. There's more to this than we've uncovered, and whoever's behind it just made their first mistake. They showed us they're scared. Claire looked out the window at the Phoenix skyline, golden in the late afternoon sun. Somewhere out there, the jury was deciding Vale's fate, and somewhere else, someone was planning their next move. The phone rang again. Brennan. The jury's back. Verdict in 30 minutes. Claire's hands were shaking as she got into the marshal vehicle. They drove to the courthouse in silence. The building was surrounded by media, protesters, supporters, everyone waiting for the same thing: justice or disappointment. She was escorted into the courtroom. Vale was already seated, stone-faced. His lawyers whispered to each other. The victims' families filled the gallery. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stood. We have, Your Honor. Claire's heart hammered. The clerk took the verdict form, handed it to the judge. The judge read it, expression neutral, then handed it back. The defendant will rise. Vale stood, flanked by his attorneys. The clerk read, "In the matter of United States versus Marcus Vale, on the count of healthcare fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of reckless endangerment resulting in death," Claire stopped hearing the words, "guilty, guilty, guilty," on every count. The courtroom erupted. Victims' families crying, reporters rushing for the exits to file stories. Vale standing perfectly still, his face collapsing. The judge gavelled for order. "Mr. Vale, you are remanded into custody pending sentencing. Sentencing hearing is scheduled for 6 weeks from today." Marshals approached Vale. He looked around the courtroom one final time. His eyes found Claire's. She didn't look away. Then he was gone, let out in handcuffs. Brennan found Claire in the hallway afterward. "It's over." "Is it?" "Vale's convicted. Maximum sentence is 40 years. He'll die in prison." "What about the threat? The phone call?" Brennan's expression darkened. "We're working on it. But Claire, you need to consider the possibility that you've made enemies who won't stop just because Vale's locked up." Claire thought about the distorted voice on the phone, the warning, the promise that this was just the beginning. "Then I'll keep fighting." "Against who? We don't even know who we're looking for." Claire turned to face her. "Then we find them. The same way we found Vale. Follow the money, follow the bodies, follow the pattern. That could take years." "I have time." Brennan studied her. "You're not going to let this go, are you?" "Not until every person who put profit over patience faces consequences." They stood in silence. Then Brennan's phone buzzed. She checked it, and her face went pale. "What?" Brennan showed her the screen. A news alert. "Breaking. Former hospital executive found dead in apparent suicide. Karen Delgado discovered in jail cell." Claire felt ice flood her veins. "When?" 2 hours ago, before the verdict came down." "That's not suicide. We don't know that." "She was going to testify against the others, against whoever's running the bigger network. They killed her to keep her quiet." Brennan's jaw tightened. "If that's true, then everyone connected to this case is in danger, including you." The realization hit them both at the same time. If Delgado could be killed in federal custody, nobody was safe. And Claire Hendricks had just become the biggest threat to an enemy she couldn't see. The safe house felt like a cage after Delgado's death. Claire sat on the couch, staring at the news coverage playing on mute. Photos of Delgado being wheeled out of the detention center, speculation about suicide, carefully worded statements from officials promising a thorough investigation. Nobody was saying murder, but everyone was thinking it. Agent Brennan arrived at midnight with 3 other investigators and a laptop that she set up on the kitchen table without asking permission. "We're going dark on this," Brennan said, pulling up encrypted files. "Delgado's death is being handled by a different team. Officially, we're not connected to it. Unofficially, I have people I trust looking at every detail." Claire moved to the table. "What did they find?" "Security footage from her cell block shows nothing unusual. Guards made their rounds on schedule. No visitors, no disturbances." Brennan pulled up a video file. "But look at this." The footage showed Delgado's cell from 9:47 p.m. to 10:15 p.m. She was sitting on her bunk, reading something. Then, at 10:03, she stood abruptly, walked to the corner of the cell, and appeared to be looking at something on the wall. She reached up, touched something, then returned to her bunk. At 10:12, she was found unresponsive. "What was she looking at?" Claire asked. "That's the question." Brennan zoomed in on the wall. "There's nothing there. No vent, no window, no obvious mechanism for delivering anything into the cell. So how did she die?" "Coroner's preliminary report says cardiac arrest, no signs of trauma, no obvious toxins in initial screening." Brennan closed the laptop. "But they're running more tests. If someone killed her, they were very, very good." Claire sat down. She knew something big enough that they couldn't risk her testifying. "I agree. Which is why we need to figure out what that was before anyone else dies." Brennan pulled out a folder. Delgado's lawyer received a package from her 3 days before she died. Instructions to open it only if something happened to her. "What was in it?" Brennan slid the folder across the table. Names. Claire opened it. Inside were copies of documents, bank records, email printouts, organizational charts, and a handwritten list of 17 names, hospital executives, board members, state health officials, all connected to Vale's network. But one name at the top of the list made Claire's blood run cold. Dr. Elizabeth Hammond, Arizona State Health Commissioner. She's the one who's supposed to oversee hospital safety, Claire said quietly. She's also received $230,000 over 4 years from companies connected to Vale's network. Brennan tapped the document. Delgado documented everything. Consulting fees, speaking engagements, research grants, all from shell companies that trace back to the fraud. Hammond could shut down investigations, block inspections, bury complaints. Gus. Exactly. She had this power to protect Vale's entire operation from the top down. Brennan leaned back. And if she's willing to kill to keep that power, then everyone on this list is either an accomplice or a target. Claire scanned the other names. Some she recognized from news coverage. Others were strangers. But they all had one thing in common: positions of authority in healthcare systems across multiple states. This isn't just about equipment fraud, Claire said. This is systemic corruption. Vale was just one piece. And Delgado was the bookkeeper who knew where all the bodies were buried. Brennan stood. Which is why I'm moving you to a different location. New safe house, different security team. Nobody outside this room knows where you're going. What about my shifts at Mercy Cross? Suspended? Too much exposure? I need to work. You need to stay alive. Brennan's voice was sharp. Claire, I'm not asking. Hammond has the resources to reach anyone, anywhere. If she knows you're the one pushing this investigation forward, she'll come after you. Let her. Stop being a martyr and think strategically. You can't expose corruption if you're dead. The words hung there. Claire wanted to argue, but Brennan was right. Dying wouldn't help anyone. Fine, but I want updates on everything. You'll get them. The new safe house was in Flagstaff, 2 hours north of Phoenix. Smaller, more isolated, with a security detail that changed every 12 hours and communicated through encrypted channels only. Claire was given a new phone, new protocols, and instructions not to contact anyone from her previous life without clearance. She lasted 36 hours before breaking protocol. She called Monica from a burner phone she'd convinced one of the marshals to buy. It's Claire. Monica's voice was tight with relief. Where are you? Can't say. Are you okay? Physically? Yeah. Mentally? Monica laughed without humor. The hospital's a disaster. Half the staff is terrified they're going to be implicated in Vale's scheme. The other half is convinced they're going to get killed like Delgado. Morale is non-existent. What about patients? We're managing, barely. New administration's trying to rebuild trust, but it's slow. Monica paused. There's something else. Someone came by asking about you. Woman, early 50s, said she was from a victim advocacy group. Wanted to know your schedule, where you were staying, how to contact you. Claire felt adrenaline spike. What did you tell her? Nothing. I said you were on leave and I didn't have contact information. But she was persistent, left a card. I looked up the organization. It doesn't exist. Do you still have the card? Yeah. Text me a photo, then throw it away and don't talk to anyone else asking about me. Claire, what's happening? Nothing you need to worry about. Just be careful. She hung up and forwarded Monica's text to Brennan. The card showed a generic logo and a phone number. Brennan's team traced it within an hour. Burner phone, purchased in Scottsdale, never used before the call to Monica. Professional. Careful. Hunting. Brennan called that evening. Hammond's escalating. She knows we're on to her and she's trying to locate you before we can build a case. How close are you? Not close enough. We have the financial records Delgado provided, but we need corroboration. We need witnesses willing to testify that Hammond used her position to protect Vale's operation. Then find them. We're trying, but everyone who worked with Hammond is terrified. 3 people we approached immediately lawyered up. 1 left the state. Another filed a harassment complaint. Brennan sounded exhausted. These aren't stupid people. They know what happened to Delgado. What about Vale? Can he give you anything on Hammond? Vale's not talking. His lawyers have him locked down tight. He's gambling that we can't prove the bigger conspiracy without his cooperation. Claire paced the small living room. There has to be someone. Someone who worked close enough to Hammond to have evidence but far enough away to feel safe talking. Brennan was quiet for a moment. There might be. Hammond had a deputy commissioner who resigned 6 months ago. Woman named Angela Torres. She cited personal reasons, took a severance package, disappeared from public life. You think she knows something? I think she got out before the walls started closing in. Question is whether she'll talk. Where is she? That's the problem. We can't find her. Claire thought about that. Someone who worked in state government had access to sensitive information and vanished completely. She didn't just quit. She ran. Agreed. Which means she's either hiding from Hammond or working for her. Only one way to find out. Brennan's team located Angela Torres 3 days later in a small town outside Sedona, living under her maiden name and working as a medical billing consultant. Brennan went personally to make contact, bringing Claire along despite the security risks. They found Torres in a cafe, sitting alone with a laptop and coffee that had gone cold. She was 43, graying hair, tired eyes that snapped to alertness the moment Brennan showed her badge. I have nothing to say. Ms. Torres, I'm Agent Brennan with... I know who you are. I saw the news. Vale's convicted. Congratulations. I'm not involved. Claire sat down across from her. Karen Delgado thought differently. Torres went very still. Delgado's dead. Murdered in federal custody because she was going to testify about Elizabeth Hammond. Torres's hands shook slightly as she closed her laptop. You need to leave. We need your help. You need to leave before you get me killed. Brennan leaned forward. We can protect you. Like you protected Delgado? Torres stood. I resigned. I took my severance. I'm out. Whatever Hammond did, whatever she's still doing, it's not my problem. It's going to be your problem when she decides you're a loose end, Claire said quietly. How long do you think you have? A month? 6 months? Eventually she'll get nervous and tie up loose threads. You know that. Torres stared at her. Who are you? Claire Hendricks, ICU nurse, the one who started this whole thing. Recognition flickered across Torres's face. The whistleblower. The nurse who got tired of watching people die. Claire met her eyes. Delgado had a list. Your name was on it. Not as an accomplice, as a witness. She thought you knew things that could bring Hammond down. Delgado was wrong. Was she? Torres looked between them, jaw working. Then she sat down slowly. If I talk to you, I'm dead. If you don't talk, you're dead anyway, Brennan said. But if you cooperate, we can put you in witness protection. New identity, new location, federal protection until Hammond's locked up. And if you can't convict her, then you're in protection permanently. Torres laughed bitterly. Some choice. They sat in silence. Other cafe patrons glanced over, sensing tension. Finally, Torres spoke, voice barely above a whisper. What do you want to know? Everything, Brennan said. They moved to a secure location, a hotel room Brennan had booked under a false name. Torres sat on the bed while Brennan set up recording equipment and Claire took notes. Hammond's been running protection for medical fraud networks for at least 8 years, Torres began. She started small, blocking inspections of hospitals that paid her consulting fees. Then it escalated. She'd bury incident reports, delay investigations, even alter data that went to federal regulators. How did Vale fit in? Vale was one of her biggest clients. His equipment fraud scheme worked because Hammond made sure state inspectors never looked too closely at procurement records. When complaints came in, she'd classify them as low priority and they'd disappear into bureaucratic limbo. Claire leaned forward. How many hospitals? 18 in Arizona alone. Probably more in other states where Hammond had connections with other health commissioners. Torres pulled out her phone, opened a photo album. I kept copies, just in case. The photos showed documents, emails between Hammond and hospital executives, financial records showing payments, internal memos instructing staff to downgrade the severity of safety violations. Brennan reviewed them carefully. This is good, but we need more. We need proof that Hammond knew patients were dying because of the fraud she was protecting. Torres's expression hardened. There was an incident 2 years ago. Small hospital in Tucson. Patient died from a defective ventilator, same kind of equipment Vale was selling. The hospital filed a mandatory death report. Hammond personally intervened, reclassified it as operator error instead of equipment failure, and the report never reached federal authorities. Do you have documentation? I have the original death report, and I have the email where Hammond ordered it changed. Torres met Brennan's eyes. But there's more. After that incident, I started tracking similar cases. I found 11 other patient deaths linked to equipment Vail supplied. Hammond buried all of them. The room went silent. 11 people, Claire said quietly. Torres nodded. That I could confirm. There are probably more. Brennan stood, paced to the window. With this evidence, we can get warrants, freeze Hammond's assets, bring her in for questioning, build a case for conspiracy to commit murder. She'll run, Torres said. Not if we move fast. Brennan pulled out her phone. I'm calling this in. We move tonight. The federal task force descended on Hammond's home at 4 a.m. 12 agents, full tactical support, warrants for arrest and seizure of all electronic devices and documents. Hammond wasn't there. Her house was empty. Closets still full, refrigerator stocked, car in the garage. But no sign of Hammond herself. Brennan got the call at 5:30 a.m. She woke Claire with the news. She knew we were coming. Claire sat up. How? Good question. Brennan's voice was tight with anger. We kept this operation completely compartmentalized. Only 5 people knew the timeline. Either Hammond has surveillance we didn't detect, or she has someone inside the investigation feeding her information. A leak. Or a partner we haven't identified yet. Brennan paused. Either way, she's in the wind. We've issued alerts at every airport, border crossing, and transit hub in the Southwest. But if she had time to plan her disappearance, she could be anywhere. Claire got dressed, mind racing. What about her office? Did you search the health department? Team's there now. I want to be there. Claire, she's been protecting a network that killed at least 11 people. I want to see what she was hiding. Brennan picked her up an hour later. They drove to the Arizona Department of Health Services building in Phoenix, where federal agents were boxing up documents from Hammond's office. The space was pristine, organized files, minimal personal items, everything labeled and categorized with bureaucratic precision. Too clean. Claire walked through the office slowly, looking for anything that felt wrong. The desk drawers were alphabetized. The filing cabinets were color-coded. Even the trash can was empty. She sanitized this place, one of the agents said. Everything here is official records, nothing personal, nothing incriminating. But Claire noticed something. Behind Hammond's desk, the carpet showed indentations where furniture had been, 4 marks in a square pattern, like a small table or cabinet had stood there recently. What was here? The agent checked his inventory. Nothing logged, just empty space. Claire knelt, examined the carpet. The indentations were deep, like something heavy had sat there for a long time. She pulled out her phone, took photos, then stood and looked at the wall. There was a faint outline in the paint, rectangular, about 3 feet by 2 feet. There was a safe here. She removed it before you arrived. Brennan came over, studied the wall. You're right, small safe, probably fireproof, mounted to the studs. She called over the lead agent. Check building security. I want footage from this office for the past 72 hours. The footage showed Hammond entering her office at 11 p.m. 2 nights earlier, 6 hours after Torres had agreed to cooperate. She was alone, carrying a large duffel bag. For 90 minutes, she moved in and out of frame, clearly removing something from the wall, loading items into the bag. At 12:47 a.m., she left. The bag looked heavy. She took everything that mattered, Brennan said. Documents, hard drives, whatever proof we might have found. Claire watched the footage again. She knew we were coming. Someone told her about Torres. We need to find out who. The investigation into the leak moved fast. Brennan's team reviewed all communications related to the Torres interview, tracked who had access to operation details, and ran background checks on everyone involved. They found it buried in phone records, a call from one of the junior investigators to an unknown number, made 20 minutes after Torres had agreed to cooperate. The investigator was brought in for questioning. Under pressure, he admitted to taking money from a lawyer who'd promised it was for legitimate research purposes. He claimed he didn't know who the lawyer worked for. The lawyer, when located, had no such qualms. Faced with federal conspiracy charges, he gave up his client immediately. Elizabeth Hammond, But knowing who tipped her off didn't help find her. Hammond had disappeared completely. Her bank accounts showed no activity. Her credit cards were unused. Her phone was off. For 2 weeks, there was nothing. The investigation expanded. Federal marshals, FBI resources, international alerts. The media coverage intensified. Hammond's face was everywhere, and still nothing. Then Claire got a call from Rachel Porter. "I need to show you something, in person." They met at the same coffee shop where Claire had first given Rachel evidence about Vale. Rachel looked haggard, like she'd been working without sleep. "I've been investigating Hammond's background," Rachel said, sliding a folder across the table. "Her career, her connections, her financial history. And I found something weird." Claire opened the folder. Inside were property records. Hammond owns 3 houses in Arizona under her own name, but buried in corporate filings I found references to 2 other properties owned by shell companies she controls, one in New Mexico, one in Wyoming. "You think she's hiding in one of them?" "Maybe. But here's what's interesting." Rachel pulled out another document. "The Wyoming property is a ranch, remote, off-grid utilities. Purchased 12 years ago, never lived in according to neighbors, but property taxes are paid like clockwork." "A bolt hole." "Exactly. Somewhere she could disappear to if things went bad." Claire forwarded the information to Brennan. Within hours, a team was mobilized. Federal agents, local law enforcement, tactical support. They surrounded the Wyoming property at dawn. Hammond was there. She'd been living in the ranch house for 2 weeks, alone, waiting for something. When agents breached the door, they found her in the kitchen with a laptop, a burner phone, and a 9mm handgun within reach. She didn't resist. The arrest was almost anticlimactic. Hammond was read her rights, cuffed, and loaded into a federal vehicle without saying a word. The laptop and phone were seized. The house was searched top to bottom. In the basement, agents found the safe from her office. Inside were hard drives, financial records, and a leather-bound journal documenting every bribe, every buried report, every patient death Hammond had helped conceal over 8 years. She'd kept records of everything. Insurance against her partners turning on her. Now those records would send her to prison for the rest of her life. Brennan called Claire with the news. "We got her, and we got everything." Claire felt something unclench in her chest. "Is it over?" "The arrests aren't over. We've identified 47 people in Hammond's network. Hospital executives, procurement officers, state officials. We're bringing them in over the next month." Brennan paused. "But the danger to you?" "Yeah. That's over." Claire sat in the Flagstaff safe house, staring out the window at mountains she'd barely noticed during her weeks in hiding. It didn't feel over. It felt like the pause before something else began. But for now, there was quiet. Vale's sentencing hearing was scheduled for the following week. Claire was subpoenaed to provide a victim impact statement. She spent 3 days writing it, crossing out false starts, trying to find words that captured everything she'd seen. In the end, she kept it simple. The courtroom was packed again. More media, more victims' families, more people wanting to see justice delivered. Vale sat at the defense table looking smaller than before, like prison had already started eroding him. The judge reviewed the pre-sentencing report, the probation recommendations, the prosecution's arguments for maximum penalty. Then he called for victim statements. 3 families spoke first. Parents who'd lost children to equipment failures, a woman who'd lost her husband, stories of preventable deaths, of lives destroyed by greed. Then Claire was called. She walked to the podium, unfolded her statement, and began reading. "My name is Claire Hendricks. I'm an ICU nurse. I've spent my career taking care of people at their most vulnerable, people who trust the healthcare system to keep them safe. That trust was broken by Marcus Vale and everyone who helped him put profit over human lives." She looked up, met Vale's eyes. "I treated Walter Emerson the night your defective equipment nearly killed him. I watched him struggle to breathe, watched him seize, watched him come within minutes of death, all because you decided saving money was more important than buying safe equipment. That one incident was bad enough, but the evidence shows at least 18 people died because of the fraud you orchestrated. 18 families who will never get justice because their loved ones are gone." Claire's voice was steady, controlled. "You stole from the hospital. You endangered patients. You intimidated staff who tried to speak up. And when you were caught, you tried to destroy the people who exposed you. But you failed. Because the truth is stronger than your greed, and the people you hurt deserve better than the system you corrupted. She folded her statement. I hope the court gives you the maximum sentence, not for revenge, but because you need to understand that human lives have value, and that value can't be measured in profit margins. She returned to her seat. The courtroom was silent. The judge took a moment, then addressed Vale directly. Mr. Vale, you held a position of trust and authority. You were responsible for the health and safety of countless patients. And you betrayed that trust in the most cynical way possible, by turning patient care into a profit scheme that cost lives. The evidence presented at trial was overwhelming. The harm you caused is immeasurable. And the court finds no mitigating factors that would justify leniency. The judge paused. On the count of healthcare fraud, I sentence you to 20 years in federal prison. On the count of wire fraud, 15 years. On the count of conspiracy, 15 years. On the count of reckless endangerment resulting in death, 25 years. Sentences to run consecutively for a total of 75 years. Vale's face went white. His lawyer started to speak, but the judge continued. You will also pay restitution to the victims' families in the amount of $14 million, and you will forfeit all assets connected to your criminal enterprise. This sentence is to begin immediately. The gavel fell. Vale was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, his life effectively over. The victims' families wept. The media rushed to file stories, and Claire walked out quietly, alone, feeling nothing but exhaustion. She drove back to Phoenix that afternoon. The safe house protocols were lifted. She could go home, resume her life, return to work. But standing in her apartment, windows repaired, locks changed, everything exactly as she'd left it, she felt disconnected from the person who'd lived here before. Too much had changed. Her phone rang. Monica. I saw the sentencing, 75 years. Yeah. How are you feeling? Claire sat on her couch. Tired. You coming back to work? I don't know yet. Monica was quiet for a moment. Mercy Cross isn't the same without you. The staff keeps asking when you're returning. The new administration wants to meet with you about creating a patient safety oversight committee. And there's talk about naming the ICU wing after you. Please don't. I told them you'd say that. Monica's voice softened. But seriously, Claire, what you did mattered. People are alive because you refused to stay quiet. That's worth something. I know. Then come back. Do what you're good at. Help us rebuild. Claire looked around her empty apartment, thought about the ICU, the patients, the work that had defined her before all of this started. I'll think about it. She hung up and sat in silence. 2 days later, she got a package delivered by Federal Courier. Inside was a letter from Agent Brennan and a thick envelope sealed with evidence tape. The letter was short. Thought you should see this. You earned it. LB. Claire opened the envelope. Inside were copies of documents seized from Hammond's safe, the journal entries, the buried reports, the evidence of every patient death Hammond had helped conceal, and clipped to the front was a handwritten note dated 3 days before Hammond's arrest. The note read, If you're reading this, I'm either dead or in custody. To whoever finds this, the nurse was right. We killed people for money. I'm sorry. It was signed by Karen Delgado. Claire read it 3 times. Then she set it down and cried for the first time since the investigation had started. Not from relief or victory or vindication, but from grief for all the people who died before anyone had the courage to stop it. She cried for Walter Emerson, who'd survived but shouldn't have needed saving. For the 11 patients Torres had documented. For the families who'd never know their loved ones' deaths were preventable. And she cried for herself. For the person she'd been before this started, who'd thought exposing one corrupt CEO would be enough. Because now she understood the truth. Vale was in prison, Hammond was in custody, the network was collapsing. But there would always be another Marcus Vale, another Elizabeth Hammond, another system built on greed and protected by people who valued profit over lives. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. And Claire Hendricks wasn't done fighting yet. Claire returned to Mercy Cross on a Tuesday morning in late autumn. 6 months had passed since Vale's sentencing. The hospital looked different in the morning light, cleaner somehow, like the physical space had been scrubbed of more than just dirt. She walked through the employee entrance without fanfare. No security escort, no federal marshals. just her badge, her scrubs, and the weight of everything that had happened. Monica was waiting at the nurse's station, 2 coffees in hand. Wasn't sure you'd actually show up. Claire took the coffee. I said I'd come back. You said you'd think about it. That's different. Monica gestured around the ICU. We've made changes. New equipment, all certified. Staffing ratios are actually safe now. Incident reporting goes directly to the state. No more risk management filtering. And we have mandatory training on recognizing corruption and fraud. Sounds like a different hospital. It is, because of you. Claire didn't know how to respond to that. She'd spent 6 months avoiding praise, dodging interview requests, turning down speaking engagements. People wanted to make her a symbol, a hero, the face of healthcare reform. She just wanted to be a nurse again. The shift started quietly. Claire took her patient assignments, 3 stable ICU cases, nothing critical, and fell into familiar rhythms. Check vitals, update charts, administer medications, the work that had defined her before everything else. Around noon, Diane Mercer appeared at the ICU entrance with someone Claire didn't recognize. A man in his 60s, distinguished, wearing a suit that looked uncomfortable in the hospital environment. Mercer approached the nurse's station. Claire, do you have a minute? I'm working. I know. This won't take long. Mercer gestured to the man. This is Dr. Robert Finch. He's with the Joint Commission, the organization that accredits hospitals nationwide. He's been reviewing our improvements since the Vail investigation. Finch extended his hand. Claire shook it reluctantly. Ms. Hendricks, I've read every report about what you did. The courage it took to expose institutional fraud of that magnitude. It's remarkable. I was doing my job. You were doing far more than that. Finch pulled out a folder. The Joint Commission is implementing new national standards for patient safety oversight based on what happened here. Mandatory reporting requirements, independent audits, whistleblower protections. We're calling them the Mercy Cross Protocols. Claire felt something tighten in her chest. Don't name them after me. We're not naming them after you. We're naming them after what happened here. A hospital that nearly destroyed itself through corruption and rebuilt through accountability. Finch opened the folder. We'd like you to help develop the training programs. Teach healthcare workers how to recognize fraud, how to report safety concerns, how to stand up when institutions fail. I'm a nurse, not a consultant, which is exactly why you're the right person. Finch met her eyes. Healthcare workers trust other healthcare workers. They'll listen to someone who's been in the trenches, someone who understands the fear of speaking up against powerful people. Claire looked at Monica, who was watching with an expression that clearly said, you should do this. I'll think about it. Finch smiled. That's all I ask. He left his contact information and departed with Mercer. Monica waited until they were out of earshot. You're going to say yes. I don't know. Yes, you do. You're just afraid of what it means. Claire returned to her patients, but Monica's words stayed with her. Afraid of what it means. Was that true? She'd faced down federal investigators, hostile attorneys, death threats. What was left to be afraid of? The answer came during her break, when she found herself alone in the ICU break room, staring at the bulletin board. Someone had posted a newspaper clipping, a photo of Claire leaving the courthouse after Vail's sentencing. The headline read, Local Nurses Fight Against Corruption Inspires Healthcare Workers Nationwide. She looked exhausted in the photo, wrung out. But there was something else in her expression, determination that hadn't been broken. She understood what Monica meant. Accepting the role Finch offered meant accepting that this was her purpose now. Not just treating patients, but fixing the system that failed them. It meant choosing a fight that would never really end. And maybe she was afraid of that. Not the fight itself, but the cost of fighting it for the rest of her life. Her phone buzzed, text from Agent Brennan. Call me when you can. Good news. Claire stepped into the hallway and dialed. Brennan answered immediately. Hammond's trial concluded this morning. Jury deliberated for 3 hours. And? Guilty on all counts: conspiracy, fraud, obstruction of justice, criminally negligent homicide. Judge is recommending 40 years minimum. Claire closed her eyes. How many people testified? 17. Hospital workers, state employees, even 2 of her former deputies who took immunity deals. Angela Torres was the star witness. Her testimony destroyed Hammond's defense. Torres is okay? She's in Witsec, new identity, safe location, but she wanted me to tell you something. Brennan paused. She said you gave her the courage to speak up, that watching you fight Vale made her realize she couldn't keep running. Claire felt emotion rising and pushed it down. What about the others, the hospital executives, the procurement officers? Trials are ongoing. We've secured convictions on 23 defendants so far. Another 16 have taken plea deals. The ones still fighting are looking at overwhelming evidence. Brennan's voice softened. It's over, Claire. The network is destroyed. Everyone involved is facing consequences. It's not over. There are other Vales out there, other Hammonds. I know, but you changed the conversation. Healthcare fraud investigations have tripled in the past 6 months. The FBI created a dedicated task force. Congress passed new oversight legislation. Patients are asking questions, demanding transparency. Brennan paused. You started something bigger than Vale, you know that, right? Claire thought about Finch's offer, about the Mercy Cross protocols, about the hundreds of hospital workers who'd reached out to her with their own stories of corruption and fear. Yeah, I know. Good, because I have another favor to ask. What? The Justice Department wants to create a healthcare fraud advisory board, experts who can help identify patterns, review complaints, recommend investigations. They want you on it. Claire laughed, short, disbelieving. I'm not an expert. You exposed the largest healthcare fraud conspiracy in Arizona history. That makes you an expert. Brennan's tone turned serious. Listen, I know you want to just be a nurse. I respect that. But you have knowledge and credibility that could save lives. Maybe a lot of lives. You don't have to decide now, but think about it. After the call, Claire went back to work. The rest of her shift passed in routine tasks, medication rounds, patient assessments, documentation. Normal nursing work, the kind that had always grounded her. But she couldn't stop thinking about what Brennan had said, what Finch had said, the idea that she could make a difference beyond individual patients. At the end of her shift, she found Monica in the break room. I need your honest opinion about something. Monica looked up from her tablet. Always dangerous words. Everyone keeps telling me I should do more. Training programs, advisory boards, speaking engagements. They want me to be this advocate for healthcare reform. And you don't want that. I want to be a nurse. I see, that's what I'm good at. That's what matters to me. Monica set down the tablet. You're asking the wrong question. It's not about what you want. It's about what you can't walk away from. What do you mean? I've worked with a lot of nurses over 20 years. Most are competent. Some are excellent. A few are truly exceptional. You're exceptional. Not because of your skills, though those are solid, but because you can't ignore problems. You see something wrong, and you have to fix it. That's who you are. Claire sat down. That sounds exhausting. It is, but it's also a gift. Monica leaned forward. You could go back to just bedside nursing. Work your shifts, treat your patients, go home, and you'd be good at it. But you'd also know that there are hospitals out there right now where patients are dying because someone like Marcus Vale is cutting corners and nobody's stopping them. Could you live with that? The question hit hard. Claire thought about the 11 patients Torres had documented, the 18 Vale had killed, all the families who'd never gotten justice. No, she said quietly. I couldn't. Monica smiled. Then you already have your answer. Claire took a week to make her decision. She talked to former Army colleagues who'd transitioned to advocacy work. She read about other whistleblowers who'd built careers around reform. She called Rachel Porter and asked what it was like living in public under constant scrutiny. It's brutal, Rachel said honestly. But it's also rewarding. You get to see change happen because you pushed for it. Not everyone gets that chance. In the end, Claire called both Finch and Brennan and said yes. She would help develop the Mercy Cross protocols. She would join the Justice Department's advisory board, and she would continue working shifts at Mercy Cross because the work mattered and the patients needed her. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she'd earned. 3 months later, Claire stood in front of 200 healthcare workers at a conference in Denver, looking out at faces that reflected the same exhaustion and determination she felt every day. My name is Claire Hendricks, she began. I'm an ICU nurse, and I'm here to talk about what happens when the institutions we trust put profit over patients. She told them about Vale, about the defective equipment and buried incident reports, and the patients who died preventable deaths. She told them about the fear of speaking up, the retaliation, the isolation. And she told them about the victory. Vale in prison, Hammond in custody, a network destroyed and a system forced to change. You're going to face a choice at some point in your career, Claire said. You're going to see something wrong, dangerous equipment, unsafe staffing, fraud that's putting patients at risk, and you're going to have to decide whether to speak up or stay quiet. She paused, looking at the faces watching her. Speaking up is terrifying. You'll be questioned, doubted, maybe threatened. You might lose your job. Your reputation, people you trusted might turn against you. I won't lie to you. It's brutal. Someone in the audience shifted uncomfortably. But staying quiet is worse, because every time you see that dangerous equipment and say nothing, every time you watch administrators cut corners and stay silent, you're complicit. You're choosing the institution over the patients, and patients will die because of that choice. The room was completely silent now. I'm not a hero, Claire continued. I didn't set out to expose corruption or change healthcare policy. I just couldn't watch Walter Emerson die because someone decided saving money was more important than his life. That's it. That's all it was. She gripped the podium. But that one decision, to file that incident report, to document what I saw, to refuse to let it be buried, that decision changed everything. Vale's in prison. Hammond's on trial. Hospitals across the country are implementing new safety protocols. Patients are asking questions. The system is being forced to do better. Claire's voice strengthened. One nurse? One report? One patient? That's all it took to start tearing down a network that had been killing people for years. So when you face that choice, and you will face it, remember that your voice matters. Your courage matters. The patient in that bed trusting you to keep them safe, they're counting on you to be brave enough to do what's right. She stepped back from the podium. The applause started slowly, then built until the room was standing, 200 healthcare workers acknowledging what she'd said and what it meant. Claire stood there, uncomfortable with the attention, but understanding why it mattered. These people needed to see that speaking up was possible, that fighting corruption didn't have to end in defeat, that sometimes the system could be forced to change. After the conference, Claire flew back to Phoenix. She went straight from the airport to Mercy Cross for her night shift. The ICU was busy, 2 new admissions, 1 patient being transferred to step down, Monica coordinating everything with efficient precision. Claire dropped her bag in her locker and picked up her assignment. Room 4. Post-surgical patient, stable, monitoring overnight. Room 7. Diabetic, glucose management, frequent checks. Room 12. Cardiac patient, recovery from stent placement. She moved through the unit, checking equipment, reviewing charts, introducing herself to patients who looked at her with the kind of trust that never got easier to bear. Around 2 a.m., during a quiet moment, Claire stood at the nurse's station updating documentation. The ICU was peaceful, machines humming, patients sleeping, the night shift maintaining vigil over lives held in temporary suspension. Monica appeared beside her. How was Denver? Exhausting. Good. You're actually doing it. The advocacy thing. I'm trying. Monica was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Not because some higher power decided it, but because you made choices that led here. Hard choices. Brave choices. Claire looked at her. You think it was worth it? Everything that happened? Do you? Claire thought about Walter Emerson, who'd sent her a Christmas card every year since she'd saved his life. About Angela Torres, safe in witness protection because she'd found the courage to testify. About the 17 hospital workers who'd come forward with their own stories of fraud. About the patients who were alive because equipment was safer now, because staffing was adequate, because the system had been forced to do better. Yeah, Claire said. I think it was worth it. The rest of the shift passed quietly. Claire treated her patients, caught a medication error before it reached the bedside, and documented everything with the thoroughness that had become instinctive. At 7 a.m., the day shift arrived. Claire handed off her patients and walked out into Phoenix morning light that felt different somehow. Cleaner. Like possibility hung in the air. Her phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. Ms. Hendricks, my name is Jennifer Cole. I'm a nurse in Seattle. I've been documenting equipment fraud at my hospital for 6 months, but I'm afraid to report it. I saw your speech in Denver. Can we talk?" Claire stared at the message. She could ignore it. She'd done her part. Vale was in prison. Hammond was facing trial. The system was changing. But Monica's words echoed, "Could you live with that?" Claire typed a response. "Yes, call me anytime." She sent it and kept walking. Because the fight wasn't over. It would never be over. There would always be another Marcus Vale, another Elizabeth Hammond, another hospital where profit mattered more than lives. But there would also be nurses like Jennifer Cole, afraid but willing to be brave. And as long as people like that existed, change was possible. Claire Hendricks had started as a quiet night shift nurse nobody noticed. She'd been underestimated, dismissed, threatened, and nearly destroyed. But she'd also exposed corruption, brought criminals to justice, and sparked a movement that was transforming healthcare safety across the country. She'd been called a whistleblower, a hero, a troublemaker, a martyr. She was none of those things, and all of them. She was a nurse who'd decided that patient lives mattered more than her own safety, that justice was worth fighting for even when the fight seemed impossible, that one person speaking truth could bring down empires built on lies. The woman they'd looked down on had changed everything. And she wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot, because every patient deserved someone willing to fight for them. Every hospital worker who saw corruption deserved to know they weren't alone. Every family who'd lost someone to preventable death deserved to know their loss hadn't been forgotten. Claire walked to her car, got in, and drove toward home with the Phoenix sun rising behind her. She'd won this battle. There would be others, and she'd be ready. Because some people are born to follow orders. Others are born to question them. Claire Hendricks was born to stand between harm and the people who couldn't protect themselves. That was her purpose, her calling, her fight. And nothing, not threats, not corruption, not powerful people who thought they were untouchable, would ever make her back down again. The quiet nurse had found her voice, and the whole damn system was going to listen.